The first thing I did was place the diary on the conference table like it was a bomb with a ribbon tied around it. Brown cover, cracked spine, corners soft from being shoved under my mattress every night for 8 years. It landed with a dull little thud on the polished wood, and every man at that table pretended not to flinch. My father looked at it first, then at me, and then he smiled. That was always his favorite mistake. He thought I was still the girl who lowered her eyes when he said my name. A certain way. Still. The girl who apologized after being insulted. Still. The girl he could move from room to room, promise to promise, debt to debt. Across from me, his business partner leaned back in the chair at the head of the table. His chair, or the chair he believed was his, one ankle crossed over one knee, wedding ring bright under the boardroom lights. A pen sat between his fingers, tapping once against a cream-colored folder. He used to tap twice before lying. I noticed that too. The accountant sat near the window with a yellow legal pad in front of him. 2 senior employees sat beside the coffee cart, both too stiff to be comfortable. My aunt had her purse clutched in her lap like it might get up and run. His partner's wife sat across from me, her eyes moving from my face to the diary and back again. Nobody knew what it was yet, not really. They thought it was embarrassing, emotional, maybe sentimental. They thought it was a pathetic little prop from a woman who had finally been invited into a room she was never supposed to own. Good. Let them think that. My father folded his hands on the table. Calm hands, clean nails, gold ring still on his finger. Even though my mother had been dead for years, he wore grief like jewelry. Respectable, polished, useful. He said, "Sweetheart, this really is not the place." That word sat on my skin like dirty water. I pressed my thumbnail into the center of my palm under the table, hard enough to make one clean point of pain. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something. The diary was never just a diary. It was inventory. Dates, amounts, initials, receipts, and things my father said when he thought love made him untouchable. It held things his business partner said when he thought a quiet girl was the same thing as an empty room. Every warning disguised as concern. Every threat wrapped in family language. Every dinner where I was discussed like a payment plan with hair and a pulse. My father sold me. Not with chains. Not with some dramatic signed confession. Men like him are too careful for that. He sold me with debt, obligation, business words, and a handshake across my mother's dining table. He sold me with a sentence I heard more times than I can count. This is what is best for the family. Back then, before the boardroom, before the diary got thick enough that it would not close flat, there was my bedroom. Small upstairs room, white door. Cheap brass knob that never locked right. There was a window that faced the driveway, where headlights dragged across my ceiling at night like slow ghosts. My mattress had a dip on the left side, near the wall. That was where I hid the diary later. I kept a blue coffee mug on the windowsill. Chipped handle, brown ring inside, ugly little thing. Mine. That mattered more than it should have. When everything in a house belongs to the person who pays the mortgage, one chipped mug can feel like land. My mother died when I was 18, plainly, cruelly, without any perfect last words to wrap around the wound. One day she was folding towels in the laundry room, humming badly like she always did. Months later, the house had a hole in it shaped exactly like her. My father filled that hole with rules. Rules about money, clothes, who I could see, and how grief looked when it inconvenienced him. People praised him for it. Poor man. raising a daughter alone, keeping the business alive, holding the family together. They brought casseroles in foil pans and grocery store cookies on paper plates. They hugged him in the hallway and told me to be strong for him. For him. I was 18, and everybody acted like my father was the one who needed protecting from my pain. So I got quiet. Not healed, quiet. There is a difference. Quiet girls are useful in certain kinds of homes. We do not interrupt. We do not ask why phone calls stop when we walk into the kitchen. We do not ask why Dad's business partner starts coming over twice a week after dinner and sitting in the chair that used to belong to our mother. My mother's chair was by the window. She liked morning light. She used to sit there with coupons and a red pen she never kept properly. After she died, nobody sat there for months. Not even me. Then, one Thursday night, my father's business partner came in, dropped his jacket over the back of it, and said, "Smells good in here." My father laughed from the stove, where he was burning pork chops and pretending that was dinner. I stood at the sink with a wet plate in my hand. Nobody moved the jacket. That should have told me everything. But grief makes you negotiate with obvious things. It teaches you to say, maybe. Maybe he did not know. Maybe Dad did not notice. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe dead women turn furniture into holy objects and everyone else is normal. I was very good at maybe. My father used that. He started talking about loyalty more. Not love, loyalty. Love is too mutual for men like him. Love has needs on both sides. Loyalty only points one way. He would sit at the kitchen table after dinner, rubbing his thumb along the rim of his whiskey glass, saying things like, "Your mother understood sacrifice," or, "This family survives because we stick together." Sometimes he said, "You are not a child anymore. You need to start thinking about what you contribute." Contribute. I worked at the front desk of his office then, filing invoices, answering phones, making coffee. I smiled at clients who asked if I was the daughter, like daughter was a job title. Sometimes I got paid. Sometimes I did not. When I asked about it, my father looked hurt. "You live under my roof," he said. "Do you want me to invoice you for that too?" And I apologized. That sentence still makes my stomach turn. I apologized for asking to be paid for work I had done. That is how it starts. Not with locked doors, but with guilt. It starts with a roof held over your head like a weapon, with a parent's disappointed face, with the old math of food, shelter, gratitude, and silence. I did not know then that a price had already been placed beside my name. I only knew the house had changed shape. The hallway felt narrower. The kitchen was brighter in a mean way. The air always smelled like burnt meat, old coffee, and his partner's cologne. Sharp? Expensive? Too sweet. It stayed in the curtains after he left. He looked at me too long. Not hungry. That would almost have been simpler. No. He looked at me like he was evaluating condition. Once, while I cleared plates after dinner, he touched 2 fingers to my wrist. Light. Casual. Possessive enough to make my skin crawl and subtle enough that if I reacted, I would become the problem. He said, "You are steady." My father looked up from his glass and smiled. "She has always been obedient." Obedient. Not smart, not kind, not grieving, not his daughter. Obedient. His partner nodded like my father had just confirmed a useful feature. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed in my work clothes until the room went dark around me. The air vent clicked on. Tires moved over the driveway gravel when his partner finally left. My blue mug sat on the windowsill. empty except for a brown stain at the bottom. People always ask why you do not leave, like leaving is one clean door, like the door is not attached to money, keys, documents, fear, shame, and a father who has spent years teaching you that the outside world is colder than his control. I did not leave because I had $73 in my checking account, because the car was in his name, because my important papers were in his office, safe, so they did not get lost. I did not leave because my mother was dead, because my friends had slowly stopped calling after I canceled too many plans, because I was not stupid. I was trapped. There is a difference. The dinner where everything turned happened in late fall. I remember because the windows were black by 6, and the kitchen glass reflected all 3 of us back like a bad photograph. My father bought steak. That alone made me suspicious. We did not eat steak on weeknights. We ate soup from cans, roast chicken stretched into 3 meals, and takeout when he wanted to seem generous after being cruel. Steak meant performance. He set the table himself, white plates, cloth napkins, my mother's old serving dish in the center, empty because he forgot to make anything green. His partner arrived with a bottle of whiskey and no wife. That mattered later. At the time, it only made the house feel smaller. I wore a gray sweater with a loose thread at the cuff. I kept winding it around one finger under the table while they talked about numbers. Deferred payments, restructuring, personal assurances, partnership stability. Men can hide a body inside business language, not a real body. Do not be dramatic. That is what my father would have said. But they can bury a person alive under terms and conditions. My father poured whiskey into 2 glasses, one for himself and one for his partner. Then he poured iced tea into my mother's floral glass and set it in front of me. His partner watched that and smiled. He asked, "Still does not drink?" My father said, "She does not need to." Clear head. That is one of her better qualities. One of. I looked at my plate. The steak was too red, juice leaking into the potatoes. My father lifted his glass. To loyalty. His partner lifted his glass too. I did not lift mine fast enough. My father's eyes shifted to me. Just that. A warning without words. So I picked up the iced tea. The glass was sweating in my hand. His partner leaned back and looked at me slowly. That was the insult of it. He did not care if I noticed. "She is quiet," he said. "That is good." My father laughed. "She understands loyalty." There it was again. That word with teeth. I pressed my thumbnail into my palm under the table. Not enough to bleed, enough to keep my face still. Then his partner reached inside his jacket and took out an envelope. Plain white, thick. He placed it beside my father's plate. Not slid, placed, like an offering. My father put his hand over it too fast. I asked, "What is that?" Both men looked at me, and I knew I had made a mistake. Not because I asked, but because I had seen. My father's face softened in that ugly way it did when he was about to punish me gently. He said, "Business." His partner smiled without showing his teeth. "Grown-up business." I was 18, old enough to work unpaid in their office, cook, clean, answer phones, smile at clients, and absorb my father's moods. Not old enough to ask about an envelope placed beside my plate. I stared at it. My father's thumb pressed the corner down. "Eat," he said. That was the whole command. Eat. So I cut the steak, chewed, and swallowed something that tasted like metal and salt. The men kept talking. Not directly about me. That would have been too honest. They talked around me about how the arrangement would relieve pressure, how keeping things inside the circle protected everyone, and how she knew what was expected. She. I sat there holding a fork while my life became a third-person item. At one point, his partner said, "I do not want trouble later." My father answered, "You will not have trouble. I will handle her." Handle. Like a complaint. Like a shipment. Like a dog that barked too much. My throat closed, but my face stayed calm. That was one thing my father had trained too well. I could look calm while drowning on dry land. Then his partner turned to me and asked, "You trust your father, do you not?" The fork stopped halfway to my mouth. My father stared at me, not pleading, commanding. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere in the wall, the pipes knocked once. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street, headlights sliding over the ceiling. I said, yes. One word. Smallest lie I ever told. Biggest price I ever paid. My father smiled. His partner looked satisfied. That was the moment I understood something, but not all of it. I understood they had agreed on something. I understood it involved me. I understood I was supposed to be grateful. But what I found in my father's jacket pocket the next morning changed the shape of my fear. He left the jacket over the back of a kitchen chair. Careless. Men get careless when they think fear has finished the work. It was early, gray light, the house still cold because my father kept the heat low and called it discipline. I came downstairs barefoot, carrying my blue mug, planning to make coffee before work. The jacket was there. Navy wool, heavy, smelling like whiskey, cologne, and rain. I set my mug on a counter. Ceramic against laminate made one tiny sound. Click. Then I reached into the inside pocket. At first, my fingers found lint, a gas station receipt. Nothing. Then paper. Folded once. I pulled it out. It was not the envelope. It was a bank receipt. White paper, slightly curled, ink already faint in places, like it wanted to disappear before anyone could accuse it. Cash withdrawal, amount large enough to make my ears ring. On the back, in my father's handwriting, were 4 words. First half received. Underneath that, 2 initials. His partner's initials. I stood in the kitchen with the receipt in my hand and felt something inside me go very still. Not numb still. There is a kind of fear that thrashes. Then there is a kind that sits down, folds its hands, and starts taking notes. That was the morning the diary began. I did not scream. I did not wake him. I did not storm upstairs and demand an explanation from a man who had already decided I was. Property with a pulse. I put the receipt back exactly how I found it. Same fold, same pocket, same angle. Then I walked upstairs, pulled an old brown notebook from the bottom drawer of my desk, and opened to the first clean page. My hand shook so badly the first line slanted down. I wrote the date. Then I wrote, "Dad received money from him, first half. For what, I think I know." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I crossed out, "I think." Not because I had proof yet, because my body already knew. That is something women are trained to apologize for, knowing before evidence, knowing from a glance, a hand, a word placed wrong in a sentence, knowing when the air shifts around men who have made a decision about you without inviting you into the room. But I had learned something from my father, too. Feelings could be denied, paper could not. So I kept writing. That first day, I wrote everything from the dinner. The envelope, the toast. She's quiet. I will handle her. You trust your father, do you not? I wrote the time his partner arrived. I wrote that his wife was not there. I wrote that my father served steak. I wrote that the envelope was white and thick and had no stamp. It felt insane, petty, paranoid. Then I read it back, and for the first time in months, I felt one thin wire of control run through me. Not safety control. They are not the same, but when you have neither, one can feel like oxygen. That night, I slid the diary under my mattress. Not because it was safe there, but because it was close. Before I slept, I touched the place where the truth was hidden and whispered one thing into the dark. Not yet. The first month, I thought the diary was for me, a place to put the poison so it did not eat through my skin. I was wrong. By the third month, I understood what it really was. It was a witness, a patient one. It did not interrupt me. It did not tell me I was being dramatic. It did not ask whether my father maybe meant well. It did not say, "But he is still your dad," like blood was some magic cleaner you could pour over rot. Every night after the house settled, after my father's television went low and blue under his bedroom door, I pulled the diary from beneath the mattress and wrote. Sometimes I wrote one sentence. He said I owed him for raising me. Sometimes I wrote a whole page. He said if I walked away now, I would destroy everything my mother helped build. Sometimes I wrote only a time, 9:42 at night. He came home with him. Both laughing. Stopped when they saw me. The pages started to change. At first, the writing was shaky and crowded. Fear writing. The kind where every word leans into the next because your hand wants to outrun what your mind knows. Then it got cleaner. Dates in the top corner. Names. Exact phrases. Objects. Who stood where? What was on the table? What paper moved from one hand to another? That mattered. I did not know yet how much it mattered, but some part of me understood that memory alone could be crushed. Paper had weight. Paper could sit in front of people who wanted to look away. My father's partner kept coming to the house. Less like a guest now, more like weather. Expected, unwelcome, impossible to stop. He would hang his jacket wherever he wanted. He would open cabinets without asking. He would pour himself water from our fridge and leave fingerprints on the glass. My father never corrected him, not once. That was how I knew the money had changed something, or maybe exposed something already there. One night, I found a note tucked under the edge of my father's desk blotter. I was not snooping randomly. That is what people call it when they want to make survival sound dirty. I was looking because I had learned that secrets have habits. My father hid things where his hand naturally went. Inside jacket pockets. Under files he thought looked boring. Beneath the black leather blotter on his desk, because he liked the feeling of control, more than actual security. The note was written on the back of an old invoice. 3 lines. Partnership adjustment. First half received. Balance after continued cooperation. No names. No full confession. Men like that rarely write the knife down. They write the handle. They write enough to remind each other what the blade is for. I photographed it. No flash. Phone flat over the paper. Breath held. The tiny camera sound was off, but I still heard it in my head. Click, click, click. Then I put the note back exactly where it had been, down to the corner touching the brass edge of the lamp. That became my first rule. Never take the original unless I had to. Copy, photograph, record in the diary, and leave the room looking untouched. Men who believe they own the house rarely count the dust. I counted everything. The second rule was dates. Dates make lies sweat. A vague story can be waved away. A date has teeth. October 14th, November 3rd, December 19th. The night of the steak dinner. The morning of the bank receipt. The day he called me part of the restructuring while I was making coffee in the office kitchen. The third rule was never react in the moment. That one nearly broke me, because there were moments when my body wanted to become fire. His partner once came into the office while I was alone at the front desk. My father was in the back room on a call. The lobby smelled like printer toner and stale coffee. I was sorting invoices into 3 piles because my father liked things ordered by urgency, even when he ignored all of them. His partner leaned on the counter, too close. He slid one invoice out from the pile with 2 fingers. He said, "You are learning." I said, "I am working." He smiled. "Same thing if you are smart." I looked at his hand. Wedding ring. Clean nails. A tiny paper cut near his thumb. He said, "You should be grateful. Your father could have let you drift." Drift. Like I had been rescued from the sea. Like they had not tied stones to my ankles and called it family stability. I wanted to throw the coffee pot at him. I imagined it so clearly I could hear the glass break. Hot coffee across his shirt. His shocked little sound, the smell of burnt skin and victory. Then I saw the security camera in the lobby corner. Old, gray, blinking red. And I understood something. My rage would be the only thing they saved. Not his words. Not his hand on my papers. Not the way he stood too close. Just me throwing coffee. Just me proving I was unstable. So I picked up the invoice he had touched, placed it back in a correct pile, and said, "Do you need my father?" He stared at me for a second. That was the first time I saw irritation under the polish. Not fear, not yet, but irritation. He wanted me small enough to enjoy, controlled enough to use, afraid enough to obey. Not calm. Calm women make men like that. Nervous, because calm means the performance is no longer working. I wrote the whole exchange that night. The coffee pot fantasy, too. I wrote it because I needed to remember the difference between what I wanted and what would win. That difference saved me more than once. The smoking gun came from a folder labeled Partnership Adjustment. Cream-colored, thick, hidden badly. That was the funny part. Not funny like humor, funny like insult. It sat in a second drawer of my father's home office beneath old tax papers and above invoices. From vendors he complained about at dinner. He did not hide it better because he did not believe I knew what to look for. He had mistaken obedience for blindness. The folder had my name on the first page. Not in the title, lower, indented, like an item beneath a heading. I remember the desk lamp buzzing overhead. The sound was thin and mean, like an insect trapped inside glass. My father was asleep upstairs. The house smelled like dust, paper, and the lemon cleaner I used every Sunday because he said clean homes reflected character. Character was his favorite word when judging other people. I sat in his chair, bare feet cold against the floor, and opened the folder. There was no single sentence that said, "I sold my daughter." Of course there was not. There were cleaner words: family cooperation, discretion, representation, transitional support, personal assurance, future consideration. Men can take the ugliest thing in the world and wrap it in language so beige. People stopped seeing blood. But then came the handwritten notes. My father's handwriting. Slanted. Pressed hard. The same handwriting from birthday cards, grocery lists, and the note he left on the fridge after my mother died that said, "Dinner in oven." Initial payment received. Balance pending full cooperation. Beside it, his partner's initials. Beside that, my initials. Not my signature, my initials written by my father. Forged, small, careless. Like even my name belonged to him if he wrote it first. I stared at those letters until they stopped looking like letters. Then I photographed every page. Slow. One at a time. No flash. No hurry. The paper edges were soft from handling. One corner had a wet ring where a glass had sat too close. There was a faint brown fingerprint near the staple on page 3. Maybe coffee. Maybe whiskey. I photographed that too. Every ugly little detail. Because ugly little details become anchors when powerful men start floating lies over the truth. The folder said something I still cannot forget. Not in one sentence, but in all of them together. It said my father had not panicked. He had planned. That was worse. Panic might have had a pulse. Panic might have been a desperate man making one unforgivable decision in a burning room. This was paperwork. This was calm. This was my father turning me into collateral with a pen that probably cost more than the groceries. He made me feel guilty for eating. I copied the folder twice over the next week. Not on the office printer. Too obvious. I used my phone first. Then later, when I had access after hours, I printed only what I needed, in small batches, mixed between normal work papers. 1 page after invoices, 2 pages after vendor statements. Nothing large enough to be noticed. I learned the printer's sounds, the little intake cough, the soft drag of paper, the pause before page 2. I learned to stand casually while it worked, one hand on a stack of envelopes, like I had not just pulled my own life out of a machine tray. I kept the copies in 3 places. One inside the diary's back lining, one taped beneath the bottom drawer of my dresser, one in a plain folder at the office, hidden among old supply records nobody cared about. That was another rule. Never let the truth live in only one place. Over the years, my father's threats got quieter. That is what people do not understand. The more control someone has, the less they need to shout. He could ruin breakfast with 1 sentence. You are making him question the arrangement. He could ruin a workday with a look. He could ruin sleep by standing in my doorway and saying, "Do not force me to choose between my daughter and everything I built." As if he had not chosen already. As if he had not counted the money. As if I was the cruel one for noticing. His partner got bolder in smaller ways. He never did anything big enough to make a clean scene. That was his skill. He corrected me in meetings where I had the right numbers. He asked me to stay late and then left before my father arrived, just to prove he could rearrange my evening without touching me. He once placed his pen on my desk and said, "Hold on to that for me." I did not want to touch it. I did anyway. It was heavy, black, with a silver clip, the kind of pen men use when they want signatures to feel like ceremonies. That pen matters later. I want you to remember it. For 8 years, I became 2 women. One woman answered phones, made coffee, smiled at clients, sat through dinners, and nodded when my father said, "We all do things we do not like." The other woman built a timeline. She saved text messages. She photographed receipts. She wrote down who was present, what was said, what changed hands, what file moved, what drawer opened, and what date matched which payment. She learned the difference between a copy and an original, between a threat and a confession, between a witness who suspects and a witness who can be made to see. I did not become brave all at once. That would be a lie. Some nights, I was pathetic, and I mean that without softness. I sat on the bathroom floor with the shower running so nobody could hear me breathe too hard. I pressed my forehead to the cabinet door and imagined disappearing. I imagined packing a bag and walking until my feet bled. I imagined standing in front of my father's house at 2 a.m. with a brick in my hand and putting it through every window he cared more about than me. Once, I did worse. I bought a knife, small kitchen knife, cheap, from a grocery store aisle with plastic spatulas and measuring cups. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just steel in cardboard packaging under fluorescent lights. I brought it home in a paper bag with bread and cranberry soda. That detail still makes me sick. How ordinary rage can look from the outside. That night, I stood outside my father's office door while he slept upstairs. The knife was in my hand, still in the packaging. My thumb pressed against the plastic edge hard enough to hurt. I wanted to destroy something he loved. The desk, the chair, the files, maybe him. There, I said it. I wanted him afraid. I wanted him to feel 1 second of the helplessness he had fed me for years and called dinner. Then I saw my reflection in the dark office window. Bare feet, old t-shirt, knife in hand, eyes empty. And I understood exactly how he would use it. Unstable, ungrateful, dangerous. Poor man, look what his daughter became after her mother died. Dead, he would become a tragedy. Hurt, he would become a victim. But alive and exposed, he could become a warning. So I put the knife in the kitchen drawer. Then I went upstairs and pulled out the diary. I wrote the date. I wrote what I had almost done. Then I wrote, no violence, no fire, no screaming, paper first. After that, the quiet war became cleaner. I stopped trying to make him understand. That was the last bit of daughter in me dying. The part that still wanted him to look at me and say, I am sorry, I was scared, I was wrong. I forgot you were mine. He was not going to say that. Men like my father do not confess because they feel guilt. They confess when denial costs too much. So I made denial expensive. I built the timeline in a plain black binder. Not pretty, not dramatic. Tabs from the office supply closet, receipts by year, notes by month, photographs printed and dated, text messages transcribed beneath screenshots, every page numbered by hand. I verified amounts against bank slips when I could. I matched dinner dates to calendar notes. I matched his partner's visits to shifts in company paperwork. I kept copies of anything with my name, my initials, or language about cooperation, representation, discretion, or family interest. Those words were their cage. They just did not know I was building it around them. The hardest part was waiting, not gathering, not hiding, waiting, because revenge, real revenge, is not the hot moment. It is not the slap, the scream, or the glass breaking against the wall. That is relief. Revenge is structure. Revenge is patience with a pulse. Revenge is letting a man keep talking because every sentence is another nail he hands you. At work, I became indispensable. That was not an accident. I learned every filing system, every client list, every password I was legally allowed to use, every meeting schedule, every vendor dispute, and every unpaid invoice. I became the person people asked before they asked my father, not because they respected me at first, because I was useful, then because I was accurate, then because I was the only one who remembered what had actually been promised. That mattered too. Power does not always enter through the front door. Sometimes it slips in wearing a headset, carrying coffee, and knowing where the signed copy is. My father noticed eventually. He did not like it. "You are getting a little full of yourself," he said one evening as I stacked files in the office. His partner was there, leaning against the doorway. Tap, tap. The pen again. I looked at my father and said, "I am doing the work." He smiled like I had amused him. Do not confuse access with authority. I wrote that down later and underlined it twice, because he was right. Access was not authority. Not yet. But access was the hallway authority had to walk through, and I had learned to stand very quietly in hallways. The final piece before the boardroom came from my father himself. He called it a transition meeting. Those were his exact words. We need to formalize the next stage. He said it over breakfast, spreading butter across toast like he was discussing weather. The morning light hit his ring. The kitchen smelled like coffee grounds and burnt bread. I asked, "Who will be there?" He looked annoyed that I had questions. "The necessary people," I asked. "Am I necessary?" His eyes lifted, sharp. "Do not start." There it was again. That old command. Do not start. Do not make this ugly. Do not put words to the thing I need unnamed. I smiled into my coffee. Not because it was funny, because the timing was finally mine. By then, the diary was swollen so thick I had to wrap it with 2 hair ties. The cover had softened at the edges. The pages smelled like dust and ink and 8 years of staying alive on purpose. I took it out that night and laid everything on my bedroom floor. Diary, bank receipt, photographs, copies, texts, the schedule he had written my name on, the partnership adjustment pages, my timeline. For a while, I just sat there and looked at it. A life flattened into paper. Ugly. Priceless. I wanted to burn his house down. I am not proud of that thought, but I will not clean it up for you. I pictured it. Curtains catching. His desk blackening. All that dark wood and brass and ego turned to smoke. I pictured him standing on the lawn in his robe, powerless, watching the thing he loved more than me disappear. Then I looked at the diary and thought, no. Fire would eat my proof too. Fire would make me explain. Fire would make him sympathetic. I did not need flames. I needed witnesses. So I packed the binder. I packed the diary. I packed 3 copies of the most important pages. I put the original bank receipt inside a clear plastic sleeve because the paper had started to fade, and I was not going to let time do what my father could not. Then I rehearsed one sentence. Not a speech. A sentence. I said it in my room, in the bathroom, in the car, softly so nobody could hear. This is the day my father sold me, and this is the day both of you started paying for it. I said it again and again until it stopped shaking. If you are still listening, this is where it turns. Because I did not walk into that boardroom hoping they would finally feel sorry. I walked in knowing they were going to lie, and for the first time in 8 years, I had brought enough paper to make lying hurt. The boardroom was too bright. That was the first thing I noticed. Not my father's face, not his partner's pen. The lights, white, flat, cruel, the kind of lights that make everyone look guilty before anyone speaks. The table had been polished that morning. I could see the reflection of the diary in it, brown and swollen and ugly beside all those clean folders. There was a glass pitcher of water near the center. 6 glasses. 1 tray of stale grocery store cookies nobody touched. The room smelled like printer ink, burnt coffee, and old carpet warmed by too many bodies pretending this was just business. My father sat to my left, acting patient. That was his performance. Concerned father. Tired man. Responsible owner. His partner sat at the head of the table, because of course he did. His hand rested on the cream folder like he was blessing it. The black pen lay between his fingers. Tap. Not twice this time. Once. Maybe even he felt something coming. The accountant cleared his throat and looked at the papers in front of him. So, we are here to finalize the transition language, he said. My father nodded. Yes. Cleanest way forward. Cleanest. I almost smiled. There was nothing clean in that room. The senior employees looked at each other. My aunt stared at her lap. His partner's wife kept one hand on the edge of the table, her wedding ring catching the light every time she moved. Then his partner looked at me. You understand this is routine, he said. Routine. 8 years under a mattress, and he still thought the truth could be bored into submission. I opened my bag. The zipper sounded too loud. I took out the diary first, then the clear plastic sleeve with the bank receipt. Then the folder. One object at a time. No rush. The accountant's pen stopped moving. My father's smile tightened. What is this? He asked. I placed the receipt beside the diary. The paper was faded now, but still readable. Cash withdrawal. Amount. Date. My father's handwriting on the back. First half received. His partner leaned forward just slightly, but I saw it. Everyone saw it. My father reached for the receipt. I put my hand over it. No, that one word did more than any scream I had ever swallowed. His partner laughed, but it came out wrong. Too dry, too fast. This is ridiculous. I opened the diary to the first page. The spine cracked softly. That sound. That little breaking sound. 8 years opening at once. I read the date. Then I read the sentence. Dad received money from him, first half. For what, I know. My father's face changed. Not all at once. First the mouth. The smile thinned. Then the eyes. The warmth left. Then the skin. Color drained from under his jaw, leaving him gray and older than I had ever seen him. He said, Sweetheart, you are confused. I turned the page. No, I said. I was confused for years. This is organized. The accountant looked at the receipt, then at the folder, then at my father. What is she talking about? My father opened his mouth. His partner answered first. She is emotional. Her mother's death, he began. I said, do not. Not loud. Sharp enough. His wife looked at him then. Really looked like she had heard the shape of an old lie in a new room. I pulled out the copied pages from the partnership adjustment folder and laid them on the table. Page 1. Page 2. The handwritten note. Initial payment received. balance pending full cooperation. My initials beside it, written by my father. The air conditioner hummed. Somebody's chair creaked. The accountant's breath came out in one hard little push. My aunt made a sound like she had been hit in the chest, but she did not stand yet. My father whispered, "You had no right." And there it was. Not, "That is false." Not, "I did not do this." You had no right. The first concession men give when they still think ownership is real. His partner grabbed for the black pen, maybe to tap it, maybe to point with it, maybe just because men like him need something in their hands when control starts leaking out. But his fingers slipped. The pen rolled off the table and clicked once against the floor. Nobody picked it up. I looked at it, then at him, and said the sentence I had rehearsed until it stopped shaking. This is the day my father sold me, and this is the day both of you started paying for it. His partner stood too fast. The chair scraped backward, loud and ugly. His face flushed first, then emptied. Sweat appeared above his lip, tiny, bright dots under the boardroom lights. His hand went to his collar like the air had thickened. He started. "That is not," but his voice cracked. He swallowed and tried again. "That is not what this was." His wife moved her chair away from him. 2 inches, then 6. The metal legs dragged against the carpet with a low scrape that made everyone look. That was the first domino. Reputation, control, gone in real time. The accountant stood next. He did not make a speech. He just gathered the transition papers into one stack and pulled them back toward his chest. He said, "I am not processing this." My father's head snapped toward him. "Sit down." The accountant did not sit. One senior employee stood after that, then the other. Not dramatically, not bravely, just physically removing themselves from the lie. One stepped back toward the wall. The other folded his arms and looked at the floor like he was ashamed he had ever taken orders. From either of them, his partner's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. No sound. His shoulders dropped. Not like sadness, like his skeleton had finally gotten bad news. My father tried to stand, but his knee hit the underside of the table. The water glasses jumped. One tipped, spilling across the polished wood toward the cream folder. Nobody moved to stop it. That was when my aunt stood. She looked at me first, not with pity, with horror. Then she looked at my father. She asked, "You did this after her mother died?" My father's lips trembled. Just once. She does not understand what I was trying to protect. My aunt's face hardened. "No, you protected yourself." He reached for her. She stepped back, a full step, like he was contagious. She said, "You are not my brother anymore." There went the second domino. Relationships. His wife took off her ring next. She did not throw it. That would have been too generous. She placed it on the table in front of him with 2 fingers, like it was dirty. She said, "I asked you once. I asked you if there was anything about this family I needed to know." He shook his head. His hands were trembling now. Badly. So badly he could not pick up the ring when he tried. His fingers pushed it once, and it spun in a tiny silver circle before falling flat. He said, "Please." 1 word. Small, useless. She stood and moved behind the accountant, away from him, away from his chair, away from the life he thought he could keep polished. Then came the third domino. Assets. Not lightning, not sirens. Paper. The accountant placed the transition folder under his arm and said, "Until this is reviewed, nobody signs anything." No transfer, no authorization, no access changes through me. One senior employee looked at my father and said, "Then we're not witnessing either." The other reached into his pocket, pulled out a key ring, and placed one office key on the table. He said, "I will not be responsible for letting him back into the records room." His partner stared at the key like it had slapped him. My father tried to speak again, but his voice came out shredded. "You cannot just... This is my company." I slid my prepared statement across the table. "No," I said. "It is the place you used to sell your daughter." That landed harder than the first line because the first line exposed him. That one named him. The accountant took my folder. His hands were steady. Mine were too. That surprised me. After all those years, all those nights, all those pages, I thought my body would collapse when the moment came. It did not. His did. My father sank back into his chair. Not. Sat. Sank. His shoulders curled inward. His skin had gone pale around the mouth. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. He stared at the diary like it had betrayed him. But the diary had done exactly what people refused to do. It remembered. His partner bent to pick up the pen from the floor. His fingers missed it twice. The third time, I stood. I walked around the table slowly, and everyone watched me. He looked up from where he was, half crouched, one hand on the chair, knees bent, face shining with sweat. For 1 second, he looked almost human. Afraid, not sorry. That matters. Fear is not remorse. Fear is just a man meeting consequences and hating the introduction. I picked up the pen before he could. The black one, heavy with the silver clip, the pen he used to turn signatures into cages. I held it in my hand and walked back to the head of the table. His chair was still warm. I sat in it. Nobody told me not to. That was the part I remember best. Not the receipt, not the ring, not even my father's face. The absence of permission. I did not ask. I sat. The leather gave under me with a soft sigh, and something inside my chest loosened for the first time in 8 years. The accountant placed my statement in front of me. I used his pen to sign it. My name looked strange at first, like it had been waiting to belong to me. Afterward, the keys were collected. Not all of them. Not every door in the world. Do not make it prettier than it was. But enough. The records room key. The office key his partner had no right to keep. The key to the side entrance my father used when he did not want clients seeing who came and went. They were placed on the table in a small metal pile. Click, click, click. Little sounds. Huge ones. My father watched each key land like something was being removed from his body. By the end of that day, the locks were scheduled to be changed. The transition was frozen. My copied documents were with the lawyer I had hired with money I saved from years of being. Underpaid and overused. Not a savior. A tool. I had done the work before she ever saw the folder. My father left without looking at me. His partner left without his wife. That part was quiet. No grand exit. Just 2 men walking out smaller than they had entered. I stayed behind, alone for a minute. The boardroom was a wreck. Water on the table, cookies untouched, one chair crooked against the wall. My diary opened to a page where my handwriting looked younger and more frightened than I remembered. I touched the paper once, gently. Then I closed it. Later, when the locks were changed, I walked through the front door with the new key in my hand. My hand. Not borrowed. Not permitted. Mine. I went into my father's office. The dark desk was still there. The chair, too. the lamp. The old smell of dust and leather and control. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of outdated company forms, I found one last note. Folded once, written in my father's hand. She will not fight. She needs family too much. I read it standing in the room where he had planned my silence. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because he had been right about one thing. I did need family. I needed my mother's memory clean. I needed the girl in that upstairs bedroom to know she had not imagined the cage. I needed the diary under the mattress to become something more than pain. So I kept the note. Not because it hurt, because it proved the exact mistake that ruined him. He thought needing love made me weak. He never understood what happens when love runs out and records remain. That night, I sat in his chair again. His pen was in my hand. My diary was on his desk. The new key was beside it. For the first time in 8 years, I slept without touching the mattress to make sure the truth was still there. It was not under me anymore. It was in the open. What proof did you keep that made them regret underestimating you?